Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we continue with part 11, On the Track of Spirituality from Some Mystical Adventures by G.R.S. Mead. Chapter 11, On the Track of Spirituality. It is a curious fact that though the terms spirit, spiritual, and spirituality occur perhaps more frequently than any others in mystical, religious, and philosophical literature, there is no consensus of opinion as to their definite meaning. Various traditions use these terms, or else terms which are most conveniently thus rendered into English in various ways. If then an attempt is made to bring out some points of interest in considering the scope spirituality, it is not with any intention of formulating a precise definition, least of all with entering into controversy, but rather with the view of encouraging inquiry into the deeper nature of words we employ so frequently. In the first place, spirituality in the modern use of the term connotes something fundamentally other than materiality or even substantiality, and it would also seem that spirituality must differ essentially from intellectuality. There are, of course, spiritual intelligences, but in considering the root meaning of words, we should clearly differentiate spirit and intelligence. Now, spirit is generally supposed to be at least as universal as matter. We should expect to find manifestations of it everywhere, but spirituality can hardly be the same thing as spirit. And so, for our present purpose, it may be taken to connote the manifestation of spirit in man. Indeed, many writers seek to confine spiritual to those who have established themselves on the path of sanctity or sainthood and are progressed in ethical perfection. But in considering spiritual in general, we should, I think, be wiser to give it a more extended meaning or allow it a wider area of manifestation, for in itself it would seem to be a natural thing. The first idea that may perhaps be associated with such spirituality is trusting childlikeness. Not childishness, but childlikeness. And therewith a supreme delight in everything, freshness, seeking for new ideas and experiences in everything around with faith and trustfulness, feeling quite sure that they are all going to prove delightful and have been specially placed there by one's Father in heaven. In such natural spirituality, it would seem, there should be an entire absence of fear of every kind. There is nothing to dread, for everything around feels like a part of oneself, and you cannot very well feel afraid of your own hands and feet. For true natural spirituality, there would be no fear even of earthquake or tornado or of any of the great passions of nature. The true child of the Spirit would feel, on the contrary, even special delight in nature's emotions. There would be no fear of death. For in spirit, man is fully conscious of immortality. In the truly spiritual, there would be no fear even of torture or any prolonged physical illness or horror. For such an one has such absolute assurance of bliss, that even if these things were allowed to happen to his body, he would know that his mind can be made so to match circumstances that the wretchedness and misery of such sufferings cease to dismay. Spirituality would thus seem to connote fundamentally a will that wills with the will of all things, quite content to run along the lines of fate, whatever they may be, though not to drift with the tide. It is manifested rather as an ever-readiness to embrace everything that comes, and that too not as a duty but as a pleasure, to embrace all joyously because there is unshakable faith that the world is really, as it were, bliss side up. And the blacker things look, the more painful their appearance, the more joy will there be in riding over the waves. Spirituality is godlike. For the spiritual, then, there should be, one would think, no taking life too seriously. It would seem to be rather a sign of youth in spirituality to be so dreadfully serious over everything, as many are, though one may generously recognize in them the high promise of future greatness. But though it is unwise to be too serious, this does not mean that we should be indifferent. The man of spirit should be in earnest and eager, but should not attach such cosmic importance to results. He should, so to say, be more breezy. When the storm rages, he draws vigor from the elements. He may feel out at sea in a great storm, but he knows with surety that however the winds may rage and blow, however high the waves may rise, he is in a safe boat with a pilot whom he trusts utterly. Or, putting it in another figure, just as the saints of old called themselves athletes, so is spirituality, as it were, the running of races, when it does not matter as far as things down here go, whether you win or lose. You only take pleasure in the running of them. You must sit loose and be detached. From another point of view, of course, it is of the utmost importance to the man that duty should be done and truth be learned. That concerns the evolution of the man, but it is, so to speak, another side of things to natural spirituality, for evolution is man-wrought. This is the concern of the man, and not the concern of the God in man, whose nature is fundamentally that of spirit. Spirituality for man is, as it were, a tuning of the mind to the music of fate, the great harmony. It is the attitude of the inmost man, the divine spark, as it is sometimes called, towards the daily surroundings of the life of the outer man, and the result of assuming this attitude, of identifying oneself with the one who ever stands rightly, who naturally adapts himself to every great change, who can instinctively shift his center of gravity and keep in perpetual equilibrium, is not only calm but joy and merriness. A result of the realization of this instinctive co-feeling with the source of all adaptability and therefore of perpetual bliss is, as it were, a bubbling over with life. When this enlivening takes place and continues, there is great joy in the whole nature. The happy individual feels at his best, feels in a sense as though his surroundings showed him off to the best advantage, feels as though he were in his true and proper place. It is instinctive with him, as though he were working like a spirited horse, not knowing or caring where he goes or what the result, only enjoying the outing. Worldly-wise people may think it very stupid not to try to understand, but such natural spirituality does not seem connected with mental comprehension as that is generally understood. It seems rather to be connected with a still more fundamental understanding. This spirituality may be said to bring about an inner relation between the man and his God which is beyond the comprehension of man as man. It connotes rather such absolute confidence in his charioteer that he does not want to be troubled with knowledge. He only desires rightly to experience and enjoy, and so with every such true act an inner understanding comes about between him and the universe, or rather cosmos, which is beyond all comprehension of men of little acts, the slaves of fate. From another point of view, we may perhaps regard spirituality as what has been of late repeatedly referred to as cosmic consciousness, in the sense of that which truly transcends the separated individualistic mode of consciousness. Or we may equate it with what in India might be called atmic consciousness, though of course we are here speculating on its simplest manifestations or adumbrations only, that is to say, endeavoring to discover some ways in which we may be led to feel after it. If this great mystery dawns upon the greater horizon of man's mind or his most fundamental nature, a new understanding of a like fundamental nature comes to birth. In such a state, it is said that if he gaze upon or contemplate with right attention any person or any object, there is a transformation of the man's whole substance or essential nature. With his lower consciousness, he, as it were, hears a sudden sound and sees a momentary flash, and then his whole being understands what it wanted. Only there is no physical sound and light. These are but figures to help the true imagination. There should be no materializing of the operations of the spirit, no profaning of the mysteries, no thinking that it is just as it were the sudden flashing of a microscopic electric spark or the striking of a match in the dark, a splutter and a flash. It is rather a feeling of being spiritually intoxicated, as it were, by the object, and thus a sudden change which may be physically adumbrated by saying that the feeling is that of the object being inside oneself or oneself in it. There is momentary unconsciousness and then an awakening to consciousness and understanding. The mystery of fate or karma has always been the greatest riddle that man has had to face. It is the that from which he has to free himself. Many have sought to escape by regarding the world as that from which one has to flee, as being a thing evil in itself. The world is very evil, says a Christian hymn echoing the constant tradition of the early saints. Brahman is true, the world is false, runs one of the great sayings of the Vedanta. But the deepest philosophy of the spirit can hardly rest satisfied with this naive dualism. There must be some other solution, some wiser way of regarding things, some true reconciliation of the antitheses of knowledge, falsely so called, some true wisdom. Whatever that essential wisdom may be, it surely would help somewhat if we were to regard fate as in some way the complement or spouse of spirituality. Or rather, let us say that one whose aim is realization should unite himself with his fate around, should join himself unto his destiny, go forth boldly and joyously to meet it. He should not flee, not be overtaken, not be enmeshed as a craven in the great net. He must marry his fate in mystic union before his spiritual nature can come to full consciousness in him, before the God can be born. This thing in itself is natural, not artificial. It has nothing in itself to do with virtue. That is on the side of evolution. And so it is, as has been often remarked by the observing, that drunkards or even callous sinners have enjoyed momentary touches of spirituality, but these are momentary only, and the reaction brings regret and remorse. Spirituality, with the properly prepared, brings with it delight in everything, full satisfaction, without any regret or remorse at any moment and without any doubt. But this freedom from doubt, this utter sureness, is very different from conceited self-confidence. Where that exists, it is not due to really spiritual experience. The spiritual consciousness affects the whole nature, and it has therefore a mental side or mental effects as well. These effects may be best seen in the broadening of the sympathies, in seeing one's neighbor's point of view as clearly as one's own. As spirituality becomes more constant, not only must there be no feeling of being apart from anyone, but no one must be allowed to feel apart from us. Indeed, the presence of the truly constant in spirituality has such power of union and co-feeling as to override all other people's eccentricities and bring about sympathy in spite of them. In spirituality, there is no question of human superiority, and among the spiritual, the bond is that of friends. In human friendship also, friends are of necessity our equals. If we once think ourselves superior to other people, the immediate result is the loss of friends. We may have many followers, but they will never take the place of friends. There has always been great difficulty in speaking of the nature of spirit, for there is danger of much misunderstanding attaching to it. For instance, if it is found urged upon those who are neophytes of the spiritual path to be in earnest but not too serious over results, many of those who follow this adventure will understand the wisdom of the injunction. At the same time, they will at once perceive the unwisdom of urging this upon the unprepared, lest it should take from them their eagerness. The many will try hard if they believe heaven and hell depend upon it. And of course, in a sense, heaven and hell do depend upon it. And people who never rise out of their personal interests spend now, for there is no need to put heaven and hell always in the future, their lives alternate days, as it were, in heaven and hell. And so it is of the greatest importance for them to be serious as to results. But all this is not spirituality in the sense in which we have been using the term. People who think heaven and hell at once fall out of the spiritual, if by spiritual we mean really free. Those who very seriously and generally with tremendous show and a most earnest and laudable desire to get other people to follow them, set to work to do right in order to reach heaven, are surely still confined within personal interests. With the birth of true spirituality, the whole point of view alters. People who try to set the world right and not themselves right with the world are still confined to the personal point of view. Spirituality, which is of the nature of freedom in its deepest mystic meaning, that is to say, cooperation with the divine will, should bring with it a sense of the fitness and beauty of all things. But to descend from the heights, let us take what may seem to some a very unheroic example and seek for a manifestation of spirituality in most ordinary things. For the spirit is no respecter of persons or things. A spiritual person can enjoy a game of cards without needing the excitement of money, can enjoy races or contests or activity without troubling whether they be followed by a prize or not. If then there be any who say that such a doctrine, such a cultivation of what we may call a breezy attitude of mind, would take all the zeal and interest out of them, and they cannot see why they should be keen about the thing itself, without any reward, then it may be known at once that in these respects they are without spirituality. For a spiritual person is one who has motive within himself, apart from the attraction of the prize, or heaven, and apart from the fear of loss, or hell, or any sense of shame. He is self-motive. He acts rightly because he understands with inner natural understanding. He works because activity is the natural thing. For the divine sun of his inmost nature brings with its rising a great desire for activity. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 3:24, "These worlds would be destroyed if I did not perform action." This is the great game of deity, the sport of Vishnu, as it has been called, of which the worlds are the counters or the cards, the playthings of the eternally young Bacchus, and so with the true man and his worlds. Therefore also should the little man here in this world play the game. Being unattached in daily life means just this, playing at life cards without money or reward. Enjoying a good game and not minding if you lose is a sign of spirituality, something very different from being indifferent or hating cards. True spirit is motiveless, for it acts immediately without thought of past or future, instinctively. Self-motivity would therefore seem to be a fundamental characteristic of the spiritual nature, and we should learn to respect it and be on the lookout for its manifestations, even in its crudest forms. For instance, in young people, the youth who delights in life and being up to anything, of course, in an innocent way, is showing forth an aspect of this characteristic. Indeed, in ordinary parlance, we speak of his being spirited. On the other hand, the youth who never moves till he has carefully calculated and is quite sure that it is going to be worth his while is showing forth quite another characteristic. He lacks buoyancy. We can note this vital buoyancy more readily in youthful people. For older folk, such buoyancy is far more difficult. They are far more complex, and we have to look deeper. If, again, we seek for similar characteristics of spirituality in the mind along these lines, we shall, I think, find that wit is a sign of spirit. This is why wit is such an enormous power, and why the opportune use of it will save many a difficult situation. It is, as it were, the direct power of the spiritual mind playing in the normal mind. Indeed, in French it is rightly called esprit. It might be suggested in the face of so much solemnity that it would be well for those who wish to teach and lead and live by the use of their mentality in a spirited fashion, that they should cultivate wit. It is a siddhi, a power, though it has been omitted from the solemn lists. It sharpens the mind. It is a refreshing motivity in language. A spirited person is then, in a certain measure, a spiritual person, using the term spiritual, of course, in the widest sense, apart from theological preconceptions. Wit is vicarious atonement in language, and vicarious atonement is the harmonizing of the disharmony of others by the power of a spiritual presence, which brings about the great transmutation. Evil is absorbed and transmuted into good or equilibrized. Wit is a manifestation, so to say, of something that happens apart from argument and is so full of life that it is capable of upsetting everything. It is a power outside reason. In itself, of course, it is an indifferent power, and if we have a witty opponent, he can carry the whole house with him without any consideration of logic. This is then how one aspect of spirit works, but it is partial spirit manifesting under limitation. The above are a few notes on the margin of a great subject which may be of interest to the unprejudiced. The endeavor has been to seek for some indication of spirit for the most part in ordinary life and ordinary people, free from pietistic and spiritistic presuppositions. Nor have I attempted to soar into the sublimer heights of the spiritual life and evoke the shades of the great souls to lead us with them, in imagination at any rate, through their great experiences, but have endeavored to keep on earth as it is called, for spirit is common to all planes. It is in itself as near earth as heaven. The spiritual man has nowhere to lay his head, for he has all places. He has no mansions, for he has all mansions. He has no temple, for he has all temples, as the ritual in the hymn of Jesus has it. Spirit is common to all men, but the consciousness of it, and much more the self-consciousness of it, is another matter. The consciousness of it makes a man superhuman, and the full self-consciousness of it constitutes the master. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe and comment, and if you can please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.